Hello all my Kenvians and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Doctor Who. A very special one because I'm finally, almost a month later, getting to the Christmas special Peter Capaldi's finale. The finale of Stephen Moffat's run on the show as the head writer, and the introduction of the 13th Doctor. And especially after the ending of that series finale, I am very much ready to get into this episode. I am actually going to be viewing this a little bit differently. Usually I watch these episodes over Amazon Prime, Amazon video streaming service. Today I'm going to be watching this over BBC America's streaming program. I don't know if they include ads and stuff like that. If they do, I will, do transitions to skip that in the full version. But yeah, that being said, oh, and I'm not wearing my glasses right now so you can actually see my eyes instead of just the reflection of my screen. But it's because, yeah, that annoys me and I'm trying to figure out a way to get rid of that. But that aside, all my rambling aside, let's get into Twice Upon a Time and begin the end of Peter Capaldi's run.
You may be a doctor, but I am the doctor.
Notice the TARDIS there, Doctor.
You might say. You. How can it be you? Do I know you, sir? This is
The TARDIS!
We're at the South Pole. Of course we are. Don't you know that? My TARDIS. Look at my TARDIS. This is impossible. Have I been moved? Is on the outside. No, I thought it probably was. True. I'd get younger. I am younger. I think I'm completely following. Where I am also my nurse. I realize that seems a little improbable. Oh, yes. Because he's a man. Older gentlemen, like women, can be put to use. You can't say things like that. Can't I? Says who? Just about everyone you want to meet for the rest of your life. Yes. Have you had some of this? Well, obviously, Polly isn't around anymore. Please, stop saying things like that.
Okay, whoa. Whoa. That's huge. Bill?
Young lady, who are you?
Is he here? Is the doctor here? Doctor!
Bill!
I knew it! I knew it! You couldn't be dead. You don't have the concentration. They are not escaping.
Well, they were. So your statement is factually false.
He clearly misses you. That ship of his is in dire need of a good spring clean. Oh, stop. Look. Oh, look.
Here's you.
Quite beautiful, really, isn't she?
Yeah. If you like, ladies made of glass.
Well, aren't all ladies made of glass in a way? Very good, sir, very good.
Are we now?
Oh, my dear, I just offend you to know that I had some experience of the air sex.
Me too.
Oh my god.
Are we? Probably just rats. I'm used to rats.
Oh god. Face huggers.
Among us again.
Huh.
This is heaven on new earth.
Oh.
Interesting.
I don't really know what to do when it isn't an evil plan. Rusty? What's the name? Lethbridge Stewart. Captain Archibald Hamish Lethbridge Stewart. I shall make it my business. You can trust him on that. I believe I'm now leaving.
And don't go forgetting again, because, quite frankly, that was offensive. Memories. What am I?
I know what you're thinking. Where is he? Hello, sir. Well, you're already dying. You're entitled to think that your day can't get any worse. Well, here you are. We can be everyone. We are everyone.
Cuddle.
Time to leave the battlefield. Basic stuff first. Never be cruel, never be cowardly. And never ever eat pears. Remember, hate is always foolish, and love is always wise. Laugh hard. Run fast. Be kind. Doctor, I let you go.
Oh, brilliant.
Well, that's one way to end. That's one way to end it. Good God. Wow. Okay. Oh, well, that was certainly one way to end it for sure. I mean, good Lord. Just a moment. All right, what an episode. I mean, I always start to get ahead of myself and start to talk about my overall thoughts before I really get into everything else. So, as much as I just want to, blather on about the overall thoughts, I'm going to stay with the structure, and let's get into my favorite parts about this episode, this Christmas special. Starting with definitely the biggest part of it all, the two doctors. The 12th the 12th Doctor? Yeah, wait, no. Yes. I'm confused. Yes, the 12th Doctor and the First Doctor. For some reason, I keep getting the numbers mixed up just because, you know, there's been the War Doctor, and then there was the 10th Doctor twice, kind of, and all that. But yes, the 12th Doctor and the First Doctor, and just all of their interactions throughout this episode. Just having both of them there in general. Now, as the episode went on, it didn't focus as much on, you know, the differences or the dynamics between the two of them, and that was perfectly fine because, you know, they had to get around to the plot. But just when they did have those interactions and how it evolved over the course of the episode, I just absolutely love that. And admittedly, I haven't experienced the First Doctor to the full degree. All I've had is, you know, the Adventure in Space and Time, which I still now even forget his name, but as the actor portrayed William Hartnell in that. And then also the pilot version of the first series of the, or season, serial, whatever, of the classic Doctor Who. So I admittedly haven't had the full experience of the First Doctor, but based on what I do know and what people have told me, it really seems like it would be an accurate portrayal or a similar portrayal to what the 12th Doctor actually meeting the original incarnation of the Doctor would have been like. I honestly do feel that way. Yeah, it was just, having those two in this episode was phenomenal in my opinion. And attached to that, but my next favorite part of the episode is that the First Doctor, the way he interacts with people, the way he acts, the way his mannerisms are for the most part, is much more alien, so to speak, than the current incarnations of the Doctor. Like, of all of the new ones from Eccleston on. And that's definitely something that was pointed out to me by commenters while I've been doing this Discovering series, is that, you know, the older incarnations, especially the original, was much different from the Doctor we have today. So I really enjoyed getting to experience some of that. And admittedly, a lot of it was sort of playing on the old-fashioned mindset, the way things, you know, used to be, just sort of like, you know, the gender stereotypes and all that before more modern-day ways of doing things. So, yeah, the original Doctor was more alien and old-fashioned. I can understand if some people found a bit of that to be annoying, because they definitely, you know, it was done in a way that made it the butt of the joke a lot of times, admittedly, but it worked for me because I like that mindset. I like that, you know, prodding at the old school way of doing things. I enjoy that personally. So it worked for me, but I understand if it didn't work for anyone, well, not for anyone else, but for other people. My next favorite part of the episode was the First Doctor's reaction to the inside of the TARDIS. The redesign, shall we say. He just absolutely hated it. Or he seemed to be having a similar reaction to the Captain. But it was just like, while the Captain was getting used to the whole, it's like, you know, how much more massive it is on the inside than the outside. The First Doctor is just, oh my, it's horrible, it's horrid. I just absolutely loved the way they did that. My next favorite part was, you know, a callback, and there were definitely some callbacks here for the spanning the overall bit of Moffat's run, because, you know, it was the final episode that Moffat has been the head writer for. But the reference to spoilers, and, you know, giving the Captain spoilers about the war, even though he doesn't, I mean, obviously he doesn't remember them afterward. But, you know, the idea that there's spoilers, you know, this only being the First World War, or what he was experiencing was only the First World War. Just the reference to spoilers in general, absolutely love that. It was a brilliant little callback to River, and just that in-joke throughout its span on the show. My next favorite part about the episode was, and this pulls back to the two doctors being there, with confusion about the doctor's age. And, because even the 12th Doctor, he had even mentioned a few times how it's like, you know, he thought he would be younger, or he would, you know, keep getting younger, and he was a bit on the older side. Or maybe it was someone else that made that reference. I can't completely remember. But how the first Doctor, he was just like, "You're me? I imagined I would get younger." And he's just like, "I am younger." Oh, it was just, I mean, even though he is several thousand years older, or well, a few thousand years older than, you know, the first Doctor, but that's beside the point. I just absolutely love that. It was a nice little joke that I liked. Yeah. My next favorite part of the episode was the return, kind of, sorta, of Bill. And I was admittedly disappointed when it was revealed that this wasn't, you know, for real Bill. It's, I mean, without going into the overcomplication of even attempting to explain how all that worked. But despite the fact that it was a glass form projecting Bill, you know, through all of her memories, making her a real Bill, I love the fact that she was there, and that she was therefore part of the adventure, even though it wasn't 100% real, I guess you would say. But moving on from there, my next favorite part of this episode was, it was a, you know, short and sweet scene. It was a callback to all the different things that have happened throughout Doctor Who, but the bubbles that were generated by testimony? Yeah, testimony. I think that was it. But, yeah, just like all the different images, the different names of the Doctor, I really like that. It was a nice little dramatic point. And Bill's expression was just like, you know, regardless of whether it's the real Bill or not, the expression she was showing in learning more about the Doctor was just, it was on point. So for me, made her more, it made me believe she was the real Bill in those moments. But yeah, moving on from there, I guess you could say this is a bit more of a callback to how the Doctor is old-fashioned, but a bit of the old school humor and how it's done in this particular episode, and how both the Captain and the first Doctor refer to ladies as being very fragile, like being made of glass, and the fair sex and all that. And it was just how painfully awkward it was to be watching that. But then their reaction to Bill revealing that she also has experienced a bit of the fair sex. They're just like, good Lord. Oh. And again, I understand if it does bother some people that, you know, they were kind of making fun of the old-fashioned mindsets and, like, you know, old-fashioned humor, but it really worked for me, especially when it's like, you know, certain things like that kind of came back at them and just like, oh, okay. It really works for me. It's hard to explain beyond that. And again, just to repeat myself, I understand if not everyone enjoys that kind of humor, but it really does work for me. Let's see, moving on from there, the face hugger. Even though we do find out that these are actually Daleks that have been blown out of their armor, just the idea of this face hugger just out of nowhere jumping onto the Captain just like it was just an absolute classic moment for me. I just absolutely love that. It's as simple as that, really. And it also kind of, in addition to, like, you know, face hugger from Aliens, it kind of reminded me of I don't know if they're called face huggers per se, but the little creatures from Half-Life and Half-Life 2 that kind of like turn characters into zombies, that kind of thing. So yeah, always love a good face hugger reference. Let's see, moving on from there, I lost my place. Oh, my next favorite part of the episode was when it was decided to take the captain back. And just that entire scene that revolved around that, returning him to his place in time. What transpired? Both sides singing, both sides getting along in the middle of this, of the First World War, the Great War. The doctors take him back, and we find out that, I didn't write down the whole name, but the person that they saved, unless I'm mistaken, is the father of Captain Lethbridge Stewart, who is, from what I've been told, an on-again, off-again companion for the Doctor in the classic era. So yeah, I just absolutely, I love how that played out. But it's like, at the same time, he's called Captain Lethbridge Stewart in this, so I mean, I could be wrong, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe that actually is the Lethbridge Stewart that becomes the companion later on. Please do clarify for me. I mean, I'm going to look it up myself here in a second, and if I can remember, because a lot of times I say I'm going to put something in, like in the captions, and I forget, but if I don't, definitely let me know down in the comments, but otherwise I will put in here like a clarification of whether or not this is the Captain Lethbridge Stewart from the old days, or if this is the father, which I think is the right way to look at it. Yeah. Okay, but moving on from there, the next favorite part is when the doctors, essentially, they accept their fates. They accept that they have to move on, that they have to take on the change, to regenerate, which comes much easier for the first Doctor, but it's definitely a harder choice to make for the 12th Doctor. And the scene that transpires after that, with us seeing not only Bill, but her returning his memories of Clara, getting to see Clara again for those few moments, and even Nardole coming back. It's like, I don't know if that was sort of a fan servicey thing almost, or what, because he was only there for a few minutes at the most. But getting to see Bill, Clara, and Nardole all there just before, you know, the episode reaches its big finale, it was a nice moment, and it made it all the more sad when they just all of a sudden disappeared. And in a way that actually, the way they did it kind of hurt more than if, you know, the Doctor just gotten into the TARDIS and left, and then they disappeared. But they disappeared while he was hugging them, and that hurt so much. Or at least for me it did. It's like, you know, it hit me right here. Just, you know, you're holding someone you love, even if it's just a projection, but you're holding a couple of people you love that you've been through so much together, and then just, they're gone. Like that for me would be more traumatizing than anything. I mean, obviously the Doctor's been through a lot canonically and through all the lore, but I don't know, it's just, it really hurt seeing that. But that brings me to, I guess you should say, basically my two final favorite parts of this episode. The Doctor's ending speech, which was just entirely the 12th Doctor. It was serious, it was loving, and it was funny. but most of all, it was loving. And as always, it was just this powerful goodbye speech. Sort of a hello speech to the new Doctor that would be coming. But as a goodbye speech for Peter Capaldi to the fans, the people who love Doctor Who. The new fans that he was the first Doctor that they were introduced to, the young kids. It was just so good. It was just so good. And then obviously that leading to the final moments where we're introduced to the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce her last name. If it's pronounced differently, let me know. But yeah, the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. And on that end, I'm ready for the next series. I'm ready to see what the crap happens there at the end with the Doctor falling out of the sky with the TARDIS blowing up again. But regardless, so those are all my favorite parts. Just to talk real quick about some of my annoyances. The first of which, and I mentioned this in the reaction itself, but the CGI for Testimony, or the glass avatars, it wasn't good. It really wasn't. I understand why they went with glass avatars in the end, because of how it works, projecting a physical form of the person's memories and all that. But it's just the CGI, at the very least when the character was talking, just looked so off. It really did. I mean, the lady who did the voice acting and, well, you know, played a character in that one hologram video that Rusty played, it's like, you know, I liked her, but just the glass CGI form, it looked like PlayStation 1 era graphics. It really did. So, just a personal note to the people on BBC, if you're going to be doing CGI, which you've been doing a really good job for a lot of the creatures that have been on this show, but don't do glass ones anymore. Don't do see-through ones unless it's like some amorphous blob. It's like either, if you're gonna do this again, run it through a few more tests before you put it forward. At least that's my recommendation. I think it's actually been a while since I've really ragged on the CGI for the show, and I understand why. It's like not as high of a budget, but it really did bug me whenever they were on screen. But moving on, my next annoyance was that maybe it was just the first Doctor being a bit stubborn, and that's what it's supposed to portray, but the fact that the first Doctor continues to deny who, you know, this other person is, the Doctor himself in the future, he continues to deny it despite being shown and told various things that prove that he is the Doctor. The first Doctor continues to deny it, or seemingly deny it. It's just kind of like, you know he's you. You know he's you at this point. It's like, why would he be lying? It's just, again, it bothered me. I mean, at least in the beginning where it was more prominent, but as the episode moved on, it wasn't as big of a deal. But when it was doing that, it was just kind of like, come on, man! But yeah, that's anyway, that's just a slight annoyance on my part. My third and final annoyance is the fact that, and I don't know if they're going to continue to do this every time the Doctor regenerates, but I think with the exception of the 9th Doctor, Eccleston, going on to the 10th Doctor, Tennant, I think the TARDIS has been destroyed like every single time there's a regeneration. And this time, it doesn't even really make sense why. She pressed a button, and then just all of a sudden the TARDIS starts going haywire and explodes. At least from before, it was like, it was because of the output of energy going on. This time, it just seemed incredibly forced as to why the TARDIS was blowing up. It's like, why couldn't it have just been a regeneration and then vroom? And it's like, you know, going on to space and time. But no, it's like the TARDIS is being destroyed and she's falling out of the TARDIS. Why? Why did that have to happen? I don't know. I mean, hopefully the upcoming series will explain that and will make up for it. But yeah, I just found that to be I mean, other than the CGI, which again is like a very personal nitpick, that part really bothered me for some reason. Just the fact that it's like, really, we're destroying the TARDIS again? But whatever. Again, that's just me. Moving on from there. I did have one moment of terror. It was very short, and I'm sure you probably know what it is, but it's when the facehugger appeared out of nowhere, or the Dalek brain just all of a sudden on the captain. Scared the crap out of me. But it was definitely a good moment, but as like, you know, just for an overall high-spirited and overall high-spirited episode, it's just that one moment of terror out of nowhere was just, it was a nice little punch and be like, oh, by the way, Daleks! Daleks without laser beams, admittedly, but Daleks all the same. So yeah, that's, those are all my favorites, my annoyances, and my moments of terror. Moment of terror. So as far as these go, I really want to hear what you all have to say in response to my thoughts on the favorite parts and annoyances. Excuse me. Are there any that you feel like I missed, or are there any things that I personally liked that you found annoying, and vice versa? Were there any annoyances that you really do think that I am being overly dramatic about how much they annoy me? I mean, it's all subjective, it's all opinion, but you know, I'd still like to hear your thoughts on that. And also, you know, any parts that are favorites for you that you think I missed, and also any annoyances, which I definitely can see there being some possible more annoyances for people, in my opinion. But moving on from there, as for a question for the episode, I mean, anyone else's question, I'm sure, after watching this episode, it's like, what's going to happen to the Doctor, and why are they why did they have to fall out of the TARDIS, and two, where are they going to land? Seriously curious. I'm guessing the TARDIS will go back to them after it has healed, so to speak. But yeah, where is the Doctor going to land? I can only assume that I'll go ahead and go into a theory. My theory is that wherever the Doctor lands will be where the first episode of the next series takes place, and then maybe halfway through or near the end, the TARDIS will appear, and it'll be like, all right, off to adventure. That's my guess anyway. But as for a track of the episode, this is probably pushing several songs into one. But what I called it was letting go of the Doctor. And it started from the point where Bill said that one of the hardest parts of knowing the Doctor is letting him go. It's just the music that plays throughout that, during that background scene when the Doctor is on the TARDIS saying his goodbyes, and then into the regeneration and chaotic aftermath, just all of that put into one was just an outstanding line of music for me. So yeah, again, I have no idea if it's actually called Letting Go of the Doctor. Most likely not, but that's my opinion on it at the very least. If there's any other tracks that you all know of that especially stood out for you in this episode, I would love to hear that. I guess one other that might stand out would be when the soldiers on both sides started singing Silent Night. I don't know, maybe a lot of people thought that was a bit cheesy, maybe? I don't know. I mean, I personally didn't, but I would say that would probably be maybe a backup just because of how important a moment like that would be. So yeah. Oh, and then my quotes of the episode. The first of which definitely had to do with the interactions between the 12th Doctor and the First Doctor, and the First Doctor's more old school way of seeing things. And it was basically just the 12th Doctor looking at him and saying, "Please stop saying things like that," in reference to, you know, having a woman around to clean up the TARDIS and all that. So it was, oh, there's so many lines that would be just absolutely brilliant from this episode that would be great quotes. It's just like, that one stood out to me because he was just kind of like, "Please stop doing that." And he actually had to do that a few times, it seems like. But then, to top them all off, I feel like the best quote from the episode has to be Capaldi's final monologue. And, I mean, I would have tried to keep up and write it all down, but I just wanted to absorb what was going on at the time, and it was really good. It was, like I said earlier in the review portion here, it was kind, it was loving, and it was funny. It had his final monologue was everything about that Doctor put into one. Lightened up a little bit on the intensity, perhaps, because this Doctor was definitely intense a lot of the time. But even in that, you could say that the final monologue was intense in its own way. Especially everything that the Doctor did leading up to that moment. It's like, you know, fighting the regeneration up until the point where he finally did give in. So yeah, it's like, even though I'm not reading it out, the Capaldi's final monologue was just fantastic. There's no other way to put it. It was fantastic. And that brings us to the end, really. And my overall thoughts on this episode. I will say that overall, I felt like the end to, or the final episode of Series 10 was an overall more impactful episode. It was a more emotional episode, in my opinion. But as far as this episode being an episode to say goodbye to Capaldi, they're not truly being a bad guy. It's like the Doctor even says, it's like they're not evil. The Testimony aren't on an evil mission. And sort of breaking out, instead of having, it's like all that seriousness leading up to the regeneration, it's like we got a lot of moments of levity. We got a lot of really funny moments. We got some nostalgia with Clara. We got the return of Bill, kind of, however temporarily, and even a few funny moments with Nardole. The kind of weird moment where he said cuddles, which was a little bit weird. But overall, I have to say that this was probably one of my favorite goodbye episodes. I would have to say. A lot of the episodes have their ups and downs, and a lot of people have very differing opinions on the finale episodes of the different Doctors. But for me, just because of how this one balanced all that out, balanced the humor and the seriousness and the sadness, yeah, I feel like, not necessarily my favorite Christmas special episode, but my favorite of the goodbye episodes. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I really do. So where do we go from here? Well, there's a whole lot coming up with discovering Doctor Who. To begin with, the next thing that I'm going to be touching on is a Series 10 recap. So any of you that would like to, please leave questions in the comments that you would like for me to answer, referring primarily to Series 10, possibly anything that you might like to see, or any questions you have for me as to maybe my thoughts on what's to come, let's keep it focused in on that. Don't worry about, don't worry about asking me like my favorite episodes or maybe even my least favorite episodes, because that will be part of the recap to begin with. So yeah, we have the series recap coming up next time. After that, I'm going to be finally doing the review for the Doctor Who 1996 TV movie. Since I did the reaction to it a while back, I'll include a link to that reaction in the description down below. But finally doing the review for that, as was long requested by James. I mentioned that in a previous video. And then also, later this year, I assume, pretty sure, but later this year, we'll be doing Series 10. Maybe not right on the days where the episodes come out, but there won't be the huge delay like there was this year, so don't worry about that. And other than that, we're going to be getting into Torchwood again. We're going to be getting back into some classic Who, and just a whole lot of different things that are Doctor Who related. It'll be, it'll take a while to get through it all, but one of my goals with the channel here is to keep something Doctor Who related in circulation as long as possible. So yeah, just to again recap that, we got the Series 10 recap coming up, the review for the 1996 Doctor Who movie, Series 11 whenever it comes out, gonna get into some classic Who, get back into Torchwood with Season 2, and a whole lot more to come. So until next time everyone, I am Papa Ken. It has been a distinct pleasure going through Series 10 and the Christmas special with you all. So until next time for the recap, I'm Papa Ken, and I will see you in the next episode. Allons-y!